Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Richie Jones-Muhammad, a music producer from Silver Springs, Maryland, who finished in 19th place on season 13 of MasterChef, representing the Northeast in the United States of America. Richie, welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I got to start with this. Your MasterChef experience did not look easy. You landed in the bottom three 2 weeks in a row, the first 2 weeks of the competition, and that had to be devastating. So what were you thinking in those final moments leading up to your elimination as you stood up there with Charles and Lizzie?
It is hard. And I think that is one of the things a lot of people at home don't realize. It's a lot more daunting in person than it looks on TV. There's a lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety. You can practice a million times for that moment. And then when you're there, cooking in that kitchen, there's all this other pressures and things like that suddenly come on that you don't really have any way to prepare for. So, in those moments, there's a lot of fear and anxiety, like I said, but there's also just a lot of reflection. And, you look back, you think what you could have done better and what you could have done to improve it. And that is really what stuck with me, the most is, what could I have done to fix these dishes?
When you were up there with those other two, did you think it was going to be you? Or like, were you hopeful or did you have a feeling? What were you leaning towards?
I think anytime you're up there in an elimination, you think it's going to be you. No matter what they say, no matter how you feel about your dish, getting your name called, it's scary enough that, in the back of your mind, whether or not you want it to be you, how confident you are, all that stuff goes out the window. It's just fear from that point forward.
And Jennifer won the contest. So she saved like the whole South region.
Yeah.
Was it like a twist of the knife in you a little bit because at one point Gordon said to Kendall, if you were down here, you would be going home for those churros. Did you think about that? Like this should have been Kendall going home?
I mean, yes and no. Being present for those comments definitely doesn't help, you feel all that anger and whatever in the moment. But at the end of the day, when you go home, it's not necessarily about what someone else did, it's about what you did. So for me, that's what's been running through my mind ever since is, what could I have done to make this a different moment? And, Kendall did his best, I did my best. I think we all do our best in those kitchens, but sometimes it doesn't all play out.
Now, how disappointed were you that you got desserts? Because Kyle won the previous challenge. So he's up there safe and he's like, all right, Northeast, you get desserts, which is a bit tougher to pull off than savory dishes. So was baking desserts outside of your comfort zone?
A little bit, yeah. I'm definitely more of a savory cook, and that's what I've, always trained for. I've loved Southern cuisine and French cuisine and, all these things that really encompass, the savory palate. And that's just always been what I lean toward. Did practice some baking, but again, it's once you're in that kitchen, you have these ingredients that you've never used before, and you have all these eggs might be coming from a different source than the eggs you get in Long Beach, California, or in Silver Spring, Maryland, or wherever you might be. So it's difficult, and at the end of the day, I'm proud of my overall experience, and I'm proud that I was able to step foot in that kitchen and stare down those beasts and say, "Hey, man, I'm gonna cook regardless."
Well, speaking of stare downs, I had like hand anxiety watching you talk to Joe because he was just giving you the business. I mean, he was
Yeah.
really staring you down, talking about how you forgot the baking powder of this recipe that you were using, but you weren't totally upfront with them once you got up to the judges station. What were you like just panicking in that moment? Like, should I tell them I made a mistake? Should I not tell them I made a mistake? What was going through your head in that moment? And talk to me about what it's like to have Joe speaking to you the way that he was.
I mean, Joe's an intimidating guy. I feel like everyone on set feels that presence. On in most people's minds, they think that it's Gordon and that Gordon's the mean one. I didn't have that experience at all. That definitely, Joe gave me the business as often as he could, and he is no joke. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's two ways you can look at a mistake. I tasted those cakes when they came out of the oven, and they were soft, and I loved the flavor. I tasted the spice that I put in, and I was proud of it. And I knew, even in that moment, this may not be a cupcake, but it's still a cake, and it's still delicious, and it still has texture and flavor that I would be proud to serve. They disagreed with me on that, and that's what opinion is. That's life. Not everyone's going to eat something and go, that's the best thing that I've ever had. But I tasted it, Nina tasted it, like I showed it to my team with pride, because I had pride in my dish. And at the end of the day, it's a learning moment. I came home and got into the baking side of things, and I've spent months trying to really figure it out and figure out what pastries look like to me, who's someone who looks at food more as an art than necessarily sustenance. Like, I love food as creativity. So at the end of the day, I wish I could have given them something different, but I'm still proud of what I gave.
Well, I'll tell you, everyone I've spoken with and former contestants and from other seasons as well have all said Joe's the most intimidating of the three judges. Let's talk about a more positive moment. When you actually made the show, when you went to that first audition, explain to me what it was like walking into that MasterChef kitchen for the first time. And then you made this salmon dish for the judges. You needed 3 yeses, which you received, and getting that white apron. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was insane. I mean, I've always watched the show and been a fan of the show, and I had always, been cooking my whole life, so it was always a dream of mine. It just felt like one of those things that you say and you kind of joke about, and you never dream that it'll actually happen. And so to finally walk through those doors and to just be standing there and seeing the MasterChef logo in person, and that stage that they stand on, and the trophy, and it is unbelievable. And then to share it with such amazing people, like everyone from every region was so cool and so kind, and there was so much heart and passion in that room. Whether or not you get an apron, you feel like that's where you're supposed to be, and it's a culmination of something. And so to share that with such cool people, and this once in a lifetime experience, it's unbelievable.
Why did you choose that salmon dish for your audition? And how long did you take preparing for that, knowing, okay, I have to choose one of these dishes and make sure it was perfect?
The salmon dish, to me, the components of it really speak to Silver Spring, Maryland. Each one is inspired by a meal that I had somewhere in the city of Silver Spring or Washington, D.C., or that little area that just, changed the way that I think about food and gave me, such inspiration. So to me, to be able to bring the components together and make something that ended up getting me an apron that I felt was good. And that to me was what this season was all about, that regional representation. So I felt like it was a perfect dish just for that. And, you know, preparing for it, it's hard because you don't necessarily know, what they want from you until you get there, until it's happening. So at home, it's hard to prepare. You end up just making the same dish over and over and over and over again, trying to perfect it in different ways, trying to figure out what you might change in the moment, plating wise and serving wise. And, even with something like fish, like I went for a medium rare, which like that's what they wanted. And I've seen it on the show so many times, but so many other places that might not be what they're asking for, so it's hard to find that line between what the judges want, what you might want to serve, how you want it to be perceived. It's hard to find that line, but at the end of the day, you just do your best and give it up to them and hope it works out. And I got lucky; it worked out.
Yeah.
Can you hear my cat? Can you hear that? Is she being annoying?
No, no. We've had cats on the show before. We can't hear her though. Was there any dish you had like in your back pocket that you were like, oh, if the challenge is right, if this lines up in some way, I'm just dying to make this because I know this is going to be a hit.
Yeah, I actually had a technique to get oxtails done in 45 minutes or less, and I'd been practicing that so much just because I wanted to show it off. I knew it was one of my favorites. When I cook it for my friends, they love it. And then to get it done in 45 minutes, I was like, that would, that'd be insane. That's usually a dish that takes hours and hours. And so I thought it would really be a highlight, but it never lined up perfectly for me to get, that one out of the gate. And I don't know, at the end of the day, I want to show my food to the world. And I feel like one day, people will try it and maybe Gordon will come back around and then I'll show it to him then. But I'm happy with the experience I had regardless.
But you also have a passion for music, right? You're a music producer.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself going? Do you feel like you're going to go musically or culinary? What do you think your top priority is, other than tending to this cat?
Right? I told you she was gonna make an appearance. For me, I've always been super into art in any form. I've been an actor in different musicals and things like that. I've done music production and singing. So I've never been one to like stick myself in a box. I'm definitely leaning into the food right now. I have a tasting menu that I'm launching and all these things that I want to do, but I'm also never going to close that musical door. So if something comes up, if someone wants to work with me, I would love to get back in there. I'm always writing, I'm always doing stuff. So I don't know, 5 years from now, hopefully I'm just doing something creative and loving it. No matter what, I'll still be cooking. No matter what, I'll still be making music. But hopefully, I'm just more in control of my destiny.
All right. Well, Richie, we were sorry to see you go so early, but what an accomplishment to make that top 20. Best of luck with everything moving forward. And thanks for chatting with Gold Derby today. And say hello to your cat again for me. And we'll hopefully see you soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.